Merritt was a godly undertaker in the city of New York. His dear old wife and he lived godly lives. They raised one son, and if there ever was a boy that strayed away from God, it was Charlie. Charlie would get into some disreputable affair, and the police would come and say, "Charlie has done so and so. It will take just so much money to get him out of this difficulty." The next week, another would come along with something else, and so it went on and on. And the two old gray heads were praying and pouring out their tears for that boy's salvation. One day, as Stephen Merritt was sitting in his office and praying about his son, and the floor was wet with his tears, he heard the voice of God saying, "How long have you been trying to save Charlie?" He replied, "Lord, a long time." The Lord said, "Now, if you are through, I will undertake." Can you imagine that? Sitting there just praying. Can you just see yourself praying over some issue? You've just tried and tried and tried. "How long have you been trying to save Charlie?" He replied, "Lord, a long time." Then the Lord said, "Now, if you are through, I will undertake." Something to think about. The old man considered, and it worked out in his soul in this way. So in other words, the old man sat and thought about what the Lord said to him. And this is how it worked out. The next time the police came and said Charlie did so and so, he said, "Who is Charlie?" "Why, he is your son." "No, I have no son, Charlie." That day, as he had knelt there, he said, "Lord, he is not my son any more. I give him over to you until he is saved." So he told the police, "No, I have no son." They looked at him and shook their heads. Then they sent another officer. But it was no use to go to him any more. It looked as if the old man had gone crazy. About 9 months passed, and one day an officer came to report, "Charlie has jumped off the Brooklyn Bridge and is finished." He wanted the old man to have the river dragged to obtain the body. But the father said, "I have no son, Charlie. Drag the river if you want to." So they dragged the river, but the body found was not Charlie's. 3 months more passed, and one day one of the clerks said, "There is one of your friends in the office." And when the old man went in, it was Charlie. He was well-dressed, clean-faced, everything indicating the light of God. The son fell at his father's feet, kissed them, and asked his forgiveness. He said in explanation, 3 months ago, I was saved in a mission, but I did not want to come and see you until I came as a man." Oh my. Well, you may have a situation like that with your child. If you don't now, you may in the future. I would encourage you to remember the story of Charlie. The human clutch. Not only is it so in your prayer for others, but in your prayers for yourself. Some of you are holding on to your sickness or difficulty with such a clutch and are so everlastingly conscious of it that God cannot get it out of your hands. You are in the very same place spiritually that Stephen Merritt was. He was so determined to save his boy that he was just doing it himself, and God was not getting a chance. Maybe you are holding on to sin with that same clutch. Maybe you are holding on to disobedience with that same clutch. Maybe it is your sickness. If there is something that is keeping you from getting blessed, let go and let your hands and heart open. When I was a boy, I used to visit the Sioux Locks at Sault Ste. Marie, Michigan, where my home was. One day a sailor was up in the mast. He lost his balance and shot over the ship into the water. Another sailor stood on the railing of the ship and watched him. He went down and came up, and went down and came up again, and everything was in a foam around him. Still, the fellow on the ship stood there. Then the chap went down the third time, limp, and just as he was disappearing, the second sailor shot down into the water and came up with him. A couple of gentlemen standing by remarked, "That fellow has taken men out of the water before." He just waited until all the kick was taken out of him. Otherwise, both might have drowned. A lot of us have to thrash and struggle and fight until the kick is all out of us before we are ready to let God take us. As a young fellow, I was as proud as Lucifer.